right out of high school. Do you want to hit the next slide there? Right out of high school, went to a Bible college in Quito, Ecuador. And at that Bible college, there were a number of Canadians, and the Canadians referred to this place called Trinity Western University, which was being offered to us Americans at a steep discount because of the dollar at that time. And I saw that Whistler was a stone's throw. And at that, being down in Ecuador, still on a paper application, applied to go to Trinity Western University, and showed up in 2001 with the name on the door. Reuben Zuidhof is what we thought, and that's how we met as random roommates.
Yeah, and my story started up in Smithers for the first 10 years of my life, skating in the outdoor rinks. So that's pretty much all I can remember. Then moved to Vancouver Island, and eventually over to Trinity Western University as well. Came over to play volleyball there, and walked into the dorm room, saw a pair of downhill skis. So I knew that we were going to be paired correctly, and they were short, so I knew that he was going to be considerably shorter than I. And there he was. He walked in, and I think by the end of that first day, people were asking if we were brothers. And that was 2001. So 20 years. Wow. Yeah, there we go.
And most people are considerably shorter, Reuben.
Yeah.
But yeah, and people, are we brothers? And it's literally been like that ever since. We've been very connected. It's hard to know where one leaves off at this point. You can see in 2004, that's just about when we were to graduate. And then in 2008, you see how seriously we took ourselves with ties and shirts. And then down to today, where we both have a swoop in our hair and keep it pretty messy. Just from in 2000, after university, I was always an entrepreneur growing up. I had started Student Loan Services, Inc. When I was 9 years old, and then grew it until all the way through university. At which point sold it for a little bit of money. And then my wife and I wanted to, Reuben and Sarah Jane were talking about going to teach in Asia. We had some other friends that were going to teach in Asia. And long story short, as three couples, we ended up all going to Asia. Reuben and Sarah Jane to South Korea. Kim and I, with another couple, went to Taiwan. In a short time, Reuben and Sarah Jane convinced the rest of us to move to South Korea as well. And we ended up all ending up in Korea. And then one night over a beer, we convinced one another to start a company where we were going to start bringing English teachers to do what we were doing. So college graduates to teach abroad. And that was the founding of our first company, Adventure Teaching, which we'll get to. And so that was in 2008 at that point.
Yeah, we went from 2008. When did you move to Seattle?
2008 as well.
Oh, 2008, Scott and Kim moved back to Seattle. Sarah Jane and I stayed. And we, 1 year in South Korea quickly turned into 6. And we refer to it as our 6-year honeymoon. We remember only the rosy things and forget the rest. And in that time, Adventure Teaching became a company, and we actually started working for our hobby full time, which I guess we determined at that point that we were in business together, and not really knowing what it was or even what a partnership was. And that began quite a journey that we've been on. We launched another business in 2010 called The Arrival Store, that really focused on helping expats transition into South Korea. That had its glory days, and then and ended as well. And then Digital Hot Sauce was started in 2014, and that came out of hey, we love starting businesses, and we need to partner with an organization that can help us grow these businesses. We couldn't find an amazing partner, so we decided to build our own. And you know, that's been hard work. That was 2014 that started. And just recently, Scott passed the CEO-ship on to an employee we've had for a while named Kyle, who is just killing it.
There it goes.
This is
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's
So just to highlight, we wanted to bring out, we've been starting these companies between 2010 and 2014. The Arrival Store had a bit of a, well, the Arrival Store hit some real hockey stick growth, was on a great pace, and then some misgivings with it. An employee basically made it so we couldn't sell anything for over a year, which in time sunk the company. And so it was a really challenging time between sort of 2012 and 2014, sorting out the future of the Arrival Store. But we lost one, as we like to put it.
We just recently launched Inbox, which Sam had mentioned, and this has been a ton of fun for us. And it's really our solution to the noisy world and giving quiet. Hopefully Sam's experiencing quiet right now. Just giving quiet and focus space to teams and office spaces and maybe even residences. You go ahead on this one.
Yeah, and this, I'm sure this makes just a ton of sense to you as well. Really clear diagram. I sketched this out in 2012, and I came, as I often do, extremely excited to Reuben, saying, hey, it clicked for me. This is what we're doing. This is what we're working toward in our career. And we're going to break this down in a much more simplistic form. But we're in a season of our business career and sort of being entrepreneurs where we're almost giddy with excitement, because this concept we feel like has been in us is now we're starting to free ourselves to have some capacity to actually formalize and create an entity that is this, it's called a startup studio, essentially, which is a one part incubator, but as an incubator or an accelerator, which is a group that helps get companies off the ground, you actually are a founder and an active member in the startups themselves. So it's really what do you do if you are a person that loves new opportunity, loves to build and start things? Well, start a company that starts companies, I guess. So that's what we're working toward out the future. And Inbox is an expression of one of the companies within that ecosystem as well. And they're all tied together, but Reuben didn't do a very good job. But right now, we will take any and every lead on the Inbox front possible. It's in that hustle phase. So inboxboost.com. I'll say it again. Inboxboost.com.
Okay. Wow. Okay.
Long story short, just joking a little bit, but we would take leads.
This picture, I think, also gives a bit of, not only does it give you a picture into what lives in Scott's head, and oftentimes this is the organization that lives in Scott's head, and the brilliance of it and the partnership. We didn't know that night we started adventure teaching on MySpace in 2007 that this partnership actually is very complementary. If Scott's mind works like this, my mind works from this into something that is brought into reality. And that's, Scott lays the vision and I help lay the tracks, and we go back and forth. There's and in different seasons, this has pushed our partnership to the brink, because of course, whoever makes the business actually exist is the more important one, right? Of course. And then sometimes, no, it's actually the person who had the idea is the most important one. And we get into these, matches together. So this just shows, I think, a little bit of our, those who know us understand a bit of the Scott Reuben dynamic, and where one leaves off, the other one takes the baton. So we just wanted to give a bit of context to where we've come. We want to layer a little bit of our heart's mission on top of this as another lens, and then just briefly go through this and then open it up to, I know Sam has some some questions that will get more at the meat of who we are, probably.
Yeah, I think Reuben, just before you go into that, where Reuben was talking about, the pioneer, the developer, the CEO, or the COO and CFO, that's been one of the places of tension, but one of the things that we're really celebrating at this stage in our partnership, and have been probably for the last 2 years, is really empowering one another and trying to free and challenge the other into fully living and embodying that role. And I'd say in terms of value, we both see the parts as equally valuable and completely necessary. And we've put that on paper in terms of we are in it together in every practical way, and in sort of the ethos and emotional way as well.
So here's our life's playbook. Simplified some of the language some of you may have heard before. This resonates with us. This on the top of this triangle, you want me to go?
Yeah, go for it.
Continual awareness and intimacy with God. It's one of the cornerstones of Scott and I's, personal MOs in life, our family MOs, and in business together. It's constantly asking, what's God saying, and how are we going to respond? The second one being kingdom mission. Okay, he has us on this earth. He's given us specific skill sets, and how are we going to grow those and give them away? How are we going to accomplish his great commission here in the world? And the last one being radical community of who is our church? Who's the body that we journey in life together with?
And I think, one of the things that you see that as sort of an equilateral triangle. Each part is really important, and that balance becomes extremely difficult as well, and is sort of filled with tension for us. But just to double down on each of these has a question for us, right? So continual awareness and intimacy with God. We ask, God, what are you calling me to? What are you calling us to? So we get clear on that, and then how are we going to respond? On the kingdom mission front, we ask the question a lot of times: where's my heart breaking? Where's my heart breaking for my neighborhood? Where's my heart breaking for the world? Where's my heart breaking for those in our community as well? And often we find where our heart's breaking, there's a lot of passion, and there's a draw into the mission. And then that radical community, right? Who is our church? You think about church not as the building, but like, who are we on the journey with? Who needs to be absorbed into a family, into a community, into relationship as well, versus just those that already have it?
The second kind of lens that we look through is knowing where the enemy lies, and where we're prone to fall. The first one being approval. And this kind of goes through the lens of even you go back to Jesus and the temptations that he experienced in the desert, and you can see it through the lens of approval, and this throw yourself off the temple and let the angels catch you, so that people can see that you are the Son of God. The second one being ambition, the being driven individuals and competitive individuals, this ambition to get more, to take more ground, and is seen, hey, Jesus, you can have the entire earth, you can rule the earth, just bow down to me. Don't you have that sort of ambition? And this appetite piece of turn those stones to bread, and this insatiable appetite that we can have for more. And being able to articulate or have the vocabulary between, even in our partnership for these three things has really helped articulate in some very, darker times, or some times where there is a lot of tension. We're going to just layer on top of this one more thing. Why don't you take these ones, Scott?
Yeah, and in the approval piece, I like to think about it through in terms of identity. Where are we finding our identity? In the approval, you see that it's flowing externally through people's approval. What do people think of me, right? The next one, you get the appetite, where, how comfortable am I? What do I have as well? And then in ambition, how do I compare to others? And I think that these are all very on point as a business leader, or as a leader in general, as a church leader, as a spiritual leader, no matter where you put it. I think you find that these become the temptation. And as Reuben layered on there too, in terms of in our society, right? We see this approval one expressing itself as, you know, celebritism. I'm well known, I'm told, I'm seen. The appetite in consumerism, just continuing to collect. Where's enough? Where we take comfort in what we have. We take comfort in being comfortable. And then finally, in competition, well, at least I'm not as bad as those people, or look at how many people that I beat in this, or look at how much larger our company is than theirs. That means something, doesn't it? And so believe that all of these temptations are constantly pressing, and would even challenge you as you're, you know, seeing these on the screen. There's likely a draw into one of these more than the others. You might find you're sort of bent toward temptation. Personally, I know some of the work that I've had to do in my life is all about, you know, am I defined by what other people say about me and the accomplishments that I can do? And a lot of times that can very easily become the impetus and the driver of my work, of our work, versus, you know, am I really feeling secure in who I am, in my genuine idea, in identity, and who God has made me to be, without that external approval.
This slide was simple to create, simple and hard. You know, I think for us, this, when we layer on such a simple diagram with very simple language, and then we look back and realize that this is difficult. This is hard stuff. You know, things that we didn't think about when we were building Adventure Teaching's MySpace page. You know, we didn't think about how hard it would be to balance or prioritize family and faith and work. You know, that is very difficult. We didn't know working with people would be so life-giving and yet so difficult. You know, building and maintaining healthy teams. Boy, that's very hard. And no wonder there's so many millions of books written about these. Got a couple of other quick examples. Making allowances for different opinions, you know, in this partnership, in the different leadership teams that we have. Be okay to disagree. Though that's difficult. Global pandemics, those throw a little bit of wrench, you know, those throw a wrench in some things and some plans and some ambitions or goals. And I think just the previous slide of approval, appetite, ambition, you know, and the constant cycle that comes back. And if we're not careful, and when we're not careful, falling into any one of those three things on any given day.
Yeah, I can even go at like a specific, very current example of the last triangle here being coming out. And I think if it was 5 years ago, the response might have been very different. But we're working on the new company. We have a lot of inspiration around it. We are looking at some new office space that could be multi-purpose and used for a lot of different things. And in one sense, it represents a lot of this stuff, but specifically office space is seen, right? If you have a bigger thing, people know that, and they can walk in and say, oh, look at this is real. They've done it, and oh, they're progressing. Look how much bigger the space is. The appetite of even it being available. But we had some really hard discussions standing in the face of our excitement. And I wouldn't say we're just being driven by the approval thing by any means. There was a lot of excitement. There's a lot of practical reasons behind it. But the temptation could have been to really move forward in what we found, just kind of stretched us a little bit further than we were comfortable with, and took our attention off of the main thing, and had us taking risk in a time where we just don't know, and it isn't a necessary risk or part of the core business. And being able to sort of distance ourselves from, the dream and the approval and all of these different things, and step back, we were able to face the hard reality and sort of kill the darling and say, we love this, we can't do this right now. So there's these constant turns as well that seem to come up that I'm sure many of you relate to.
Okay, I know why Sam wanted to come into our office, so that he could just cut us off. We'll talk forever. So thank you. I mean, that's just a high level summary, but would love to hear Sam, and I know maybe some other people have some questions too. Sam asked if anything was off how do you say that?
Limits.
Off limits. No. So Sam, what would you
Yeah, no, that was fantastic, guys, and thank you so much for that. I mean, I think for me, it's clear that you guys went to Bible school, because that was a sermon in itself. I was learning from those diagrams. I was actually sitting there going, I need to apply that into my own life. I was really going like, those are things that I deal with day in and day out myself as an entrepreneur that has a startup that works with two different startups. And I was really thinking through those diagrams that you had just showed. And I was like, we're all looking for, the whole point of social media is that we're looking for approval from people that we necessarily wouldn't even talk to day in and day out. But somehow that approval fuels us to move forward. So thank you for those diagrams. It's so important. One thing that you guys touched on that I actually had as a question was, being so close, being roommates and then friends and then traveling together and then starting a business together, what happens when you guys disagree?
Scott falls in line.
We have a wrestling match.
Yeah.
And I always win.
I was going to say, Reuben's pretty big, so I'm not sure about that. But
I'm really strong.
Thank you, Sam.
Really
what happens? We had a business coach back starting probably in 2012 for a few years, and he was so wise, and he set us on a trajectory of weekly meetings together. So we have every Wednesday from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. booked off, and our teams know that that's not time that they can ever take over, and it's sacred for Scott and I to really dive into life, friendship, marriages, what's really going on, and hopefully we save enough time to talk about the businesses as well. And in that weekly rhythm, we ask some very pointed questions, and it's meant to really get, is there anything bubbling, get it out before it really bubbles and does harm. And the best example of that is in college, we roomed together for 3 years. And right near the end of our time there, before Scott graduated, one morning I'm eating breakfast and he just loses it on me. He's still in bed, and I guess I scrape my bowl, and I'm seeing my dad on the call here, and I think Dad and I scrape our bowls.
You really do scrape
we got to
bowls.
make sure we get all the granola out. Well, Scott bottled this for 3 years, and finally, I guess one morning it was almost the end of our friendship over a cereal bowl. And that was really for us, and we laugh about that now. And asking the question 3 years prior, hey, does anything bother you? Yeah, you eat your cereal too loudly. Oh, okay, sure, I get that. We would have avoided that whole thing. So not that we don't have disagreements, we have disagreements. We try to nip them earlier than we ever have. And when we do, there's a lot of history now between us. We know one another really well. We know our tendencies, we know our skills, and we were able to be very, very honest with each other, knowing that there's a lot of trust, and there's a commitment. There's a commitment to one another in our friendship.
That's awesome.
One thing that I would add is I don't know that we would have been able to navigate some of the most tenuous times without our business coach, who was one part counselor, another part business coach. who was able to understand both sides and provided, much like a marriage counselor would in marriage, a different perspective and speaking directly at those times. And then the other major thing that we do is 2 retreats throughout the year. One is just a day retreat where we recenter and we talk about what are our priorities, what are we really working on, and the other one is more extended, either 2 or 3 nights away and really going deep, and we work on having fun during that time, and then we work on getting down to really getting outside our day-to-day so that we can think clearly. And within that, there's some real deep partnership check-ins to say what's priority for each family at this stage as well, because our priorities don't always align. We have very different families as well. So,
and those retreats, is that led by someone? Is it guided by someone, or is that just the 2 of you guys going away?
It's the 2 of us. For the last probably 4 or 5 of them, we've dialed in the business coach that we've spoken about. We've dialed him in for our very first session actually together. So for the first 2 hours or so for the retreat, and it's guided by an agenda that's the same every year, and then I kind of put more detail on it and change things as needed. So we have a good idea of the rhythm and the flow of what those 3 days look like.
Awesome. Okay, we have questions coming in. So if you guys have questions, please put it in the chat box. We have Russell moderating the chat box, so just put it there and then he'll send me the questions. So Lawrence asks, as white males, which you guys are if you didn't know, how do you allow for diversity and integration into your companies and businesses? Share some strategies or ideas.
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think it's always been a piece of what we've done. So we've worked in a very diverse environment. When we were working in Asia, we were the minority. Actually, we were the outsiders in the culture, and we were definitely the odd ones out. So we really can empathize with that. I think. Secondly, something that really comes to mind is in terms of powerful, gifted women being given the same authority and the same benefits, and going through and even auditing, is that true? That's our heart, but is that true? And learning things like women in business positions often don't negotiate for as much in their employment agreement, right? So the males get paid more, and then that being brought to our attention by a course that we did or whatever it was with Unbalance, really insightful. And then in terms of diversity too, that our team is extremely diverse as it stands. I'm not sure how we got there. I wasn't always but we do.
Yeah, it's a good question, Lawrence. In addition to that, there's we try to speak openly about it with the team, with our leadership team when we're hiring. We try, yesterday, I think a part of it is too knowing the privilege that we have, and the prayer in our partnership meeting yesterday morning was specifically on diversity. Who are you drawing us to, God, in the spirit of diversity? Who? Like open our eyes, and kind of being open-handed to say who comes our way and who are we to go pursue. So I don't know if that answers it, Lawrence, but it's very much a dialogue we're constantly a part of.
No, that's great. And this is kind of, I think the next couple questions will also help shape this question. But the next question is, can the value of ambition be positive? God's mission for us is global, to make disciples of all nations. Can we be ambitious to win souls for Jesus, like in the workplace?
Yeah, I absolutely believe that ambition can be positive. I think when the lens that comes to me first that we tackle the word ambition with is, I would just put selfish in front of that. The ambition for the raising up of myself or us. And that for me is probably where I would distinguish. Is this ambition for the kingdom, or is this ambition for Reuben? And I often, like many of us probably know very quickly, if I ask myself that question honestly, my gut will tell me which one it is.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, one thing I think about, especially with the breakdown that you had with your partner on the sorry,
Arrival store.
Yeah.
thank you, Arrival Store. With that, what do you think precipitated that breakdown? How did that occur? And then as a Christian business person, how are you able to deal with that type of conflict in a way that still gives, still recognizes your relationship with Christ?
That's good. How did it break down? The quick context would be it was our lead employee in South Korea. So as we moved back here, he continued to run the ship over there, and usually I would be the one that would go back a couple times a year. And there came a time when he tried to take over the business, and we had to step back and say, what's our call here? What's our role? What's the wise thing to do? And I had gone to Korea and let him go. And out of that came an onslaught of
Anything you can throw at us.
just,
Yeah.
business and civil suits against me personally and against the business. And those were dark times. Boy, that was 2 years of those who walked close with me it was hard, really, really hard.
And super hurtful too, in terms of this is somebody that had been with us an extremely long time. Reuben especially had worked with in the trenches very closely, was an extremely trusted relationship. And then it turned where essentially it felt like he had more leverage over us, and was trying to exercise that leverage to take control. And at one point we just said no.
Yeah, so Sam, I think the second part of your question is, as with a foundation of faith, how do we navigate that? Something like that. That's what
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the simple answer is prayer, but that doesn't mean it's easy. And I think it was the continual, a lot of the hardships that we've endured or come up against. We've been so grateful for partnership, because though a lot of it was against me personally and the work I had done in South Korea, a lot of our discussions, we were able to shoulder it together. So we're able to take it to prayer. Scott's able to support me. I'm able to, on a rough day, I can download on him, and he can help carry the weight for me.
Yeah.
And I think there's the other piece of really practically, your mind goes to some dark places about how you can strike back as well. And you can make their life hell too. And in that, I think the faith really comes alive, where you say, I'm feeling super emotional. I'm feeling really hurt. I follow a God that's full of grace and extends me grace constantly. And, some of these principles of revenge doesn't really help anybody. So there's that sense of, over a process of time, being able to feel okay releasing it and not needing to have the upper hand and just saying, okay, guess you won that one. Hurts, mad about it, but we're not going to spend any more blood, sweat, and tears on it. We're just going to continue to plow forward because it doesn't define us.
Yeah, no, that's so tough to do, but really, really well said. One question that came in is, how are you able to teach kingdom culture with your teams? Do you have any stories that highlight that?
Yeah, it's interesting where I'd say we try to lead through curiosity versus preaching. We aren't afraid to take a moment and really share very honestly. This is where my hopes coming from. But I'd say our general modus operandi is to just let our culture be what it is, to be vulnerable in our weaknesses, to be strong in the areas, to own things, but really to embody kingdom principles, to embody intimacy and love of God and what that means for us, and also not setting ourselves up to be perfect and targets of people that would sort of be that way. And we've noticed at a lot of different times of operating like that, one of our team members who isn't a Christian will say, like, there's something different. Can you just like, I know you've mentioned a lot of spiritual stuff. Can you just like tell me what that is? And it's much different when we've shared it in a little bit of times, but when somebody comes to us and wants to know what it is, we try to live in a way that provokes those questions without being too overt. I don't think that works very well these days.
Absolutely. And, with all the hard stuff, one of the questions I have is, what's been the payoff? Like, what's been the joy of it? Like, do you have a good story of a success story, something that's really been positive that's come out of all this?
I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is a trip we took with our staff a couple of years ago, and for us, people are priority. We love people in and out of work, and we're oftentimes very invitational. So in being able to build a team feels like a privilege. Sometimes when we're hiring, you get kind of giddy because you're like, wow, we get to invite another person into this ecosystem, and boy, I can't wait to learn about them and to work with them. And then to take a team on a trip is just next level. So we went to Whistler for a couple nights, and the memories that came out of that, the bonding, the relationships built that came out of that, I think both Scott and I came away from that trip being extremely grateful and like a big breath of fresh air, being like, man, remember building that MySpace page that one night? Like, did you ever think this would happen? Because this is fun. And we should get this on the docket at least once a month. Our budget won't allow that, but boy, that would be fun. So that's like a quick win that I could spout off. I don't know if one comes to you.
Yeah, there's so many wins, but my phrase these days has been like, I'm living my best life at work. This is a bit of a dream come true. And not that we've arrived. I think there's this transition that sort of happens where you realize you never get there. And like, it's never like it's done, or that it just gets really easy or anything like that. There's this just sense of peace that it's like, we're building meaningful stuff that we're really passionate about. We're getting to work with incredible people. We've got constant challenge and adventure in front of us, and we feel like it's important. And honestly, it's just a ton of fun. We love starting things as well. The whole journey has become much less about like how we can take over the world, and much more about like, wow, let's enjoy this and let's do this with folks.
No, that's awesome. And so with that in mind, where do you see this? Where do you see this ecosystem in the next 3 to 5 years? Like, using these kingdom principles that you've been sharing, which are really inspirational, where do you see this going in the next 3 to 5 years?
Man, do I get to take this one, or you can take this one first? You go ahead. You go ahead.
You can start. I'll fill in the gaps.
I think that's the most exciting part, is dreaming about what is possible. If you can raise up leaders, you can do anything. I think there's a reason that Jesus led with discipleship. And we've been trying to do that for a really long time. To be honest, I don't know how good we are at it, but that doesn't mean that we're going to stop. I think if we can really invest in, raise up, walk alongside people, and it's not always forever. There's sometimes for a time, but that's the piece. I think if we can learn how to do that, continue to do that better and better over the career, I think we can do anything. And what we're trying to define now is, what sort of projects do we want to work on. There's a ton of needs, and there's a ton of issues. There's also a ton of opportunities. But if there's plenty of opportunity that is in a kingdom principle, make an impact sort of way, like we can address a recycling issue or something like that. For some reason, we feel some energy around that. Why not do that versus just something that is a really promising financial opportunity? So we're trying to really align with, like, what is the work you're calling us to do in this next season? Not that we have plenty going on. So we're conceptually looking out the window.
Yeah, through my mind's eye too, in taking our experience over the last 14, 15 years, heck, our lives, and saying, wow, we enjoy building business. Some days I think we're good at it. And we also have passions bubbling up from us. And it's not just us that have passions. It's people that we come in contact with saying, wow, have you ever thought of this? Or, wow, man, my heart breaks here. And this model of a startup studio is very much appealing because we believe it's maybe a next phase of our life's work, being able to build an infrastructure that can support people who are passionate about an idea that hopefully is viable one day. So you can be a place, an ecosystem that people that wouldn't otherwise champion their idea could actually come in. You could support them, help them grow a business, and they could spin out an organization that has some kingdom impact to it. Not everyone coming through will be, kingdom oriented, but the impact can be kingdom oriented. And that's, I think, the amazing thing about our God, who works so mysteriously, where people will be doing his work, though they can't articulate that they're doing his work. So that's our heartbeat for the next little bit.
Yeah, I love that. I think
Sam, can I add one more piece is that, we've gotten the privilege of working together. And one of the things that you constantly hear from entrepreneurs is how lonely it is, and the constant decisions that you're making. And so a piece of this startup studio is that you don't have to go it alone. Providing a community that can come around you and be a source of camaraderie and be there when the stuff hits the fan, and et cetera, that's a big piece of what we are passionate about.
And that leads right into the next question that Jen asked, which is, do you see that your partnership is critical to what you have done so far? Or do you think you would have done just as well as entrepreneurs and in life and faith on your own?
Yeah, Scott needed me. Yeah, I think that's the bottom line.
That's clear.
True.
Yeah,
It is true.
Yeah, I think there is such a strength when you have when you work with people or someone with a complementary skill set, and when you layer on how well Scott and I know each other, you have someone beside you that can bring out things in you that you never knew possible. You also have someone who can call things out in you that you wish no one knew. And I think, Jen, to answer that question, no, I don't think I'd be sitting here. I don't think I'd be sitting here saying, wow, look at, this has been so fun. I think I'd probably, I don't know where I'd be. I no idea. So I do know that the partnership has been a strength, and something that, despite even without any business or anything that we've done, the amount of even self-work that we've had to do in order to make a partnership work has been something that has been extremely beneficial and worth every minute.
Yeah, I don't think I would have been here.
No, that's awesome. And Pastor Dave Koop, who preaches at Coastal Church downtown, he often talks about this word kava, which means to intertwine, and the strength that happens when you're intertwined with other faith believers, and what can come from that. So it's amazing. Just there's two questions that are really similar here that Peter and Andrew both asked, and it says, basically what guides and shapes your understanding of kingdom mission, and how do you determine God's kingdom mission for your business venture?
I think it's interesting, when we're walking intimately with God, you're aware He's speaking into these things, and we're each really unique. And He's the good Father that knows His kids really, really well, and is speaking into these things internally if we're paying attention. So right now, what I'm trying to think about is, we, as Christians, generally, we do a lot of navel gazing. We spend a lot of time focused on tweaking 5%. Let's improve a little bit. I was just doing a little inventory, and we've spent a ton of time really working on discipling and pouring into some of the most privileged people and gifted people I know. Why are we spending our time trying to make a 5% impact, when if we took a much different approach and said, well, this is a person that's never been given a shot, we could change a family line here with some effort and giving a shot and walking alongside and discipling. Why aren't we thinking like that? We think about that in so many different ways, but I sense the Lord saying, like, get outside this group of people and get into the places where there really are some needs, and massive impact can be had versus just small tweaking and improvements.
I'm being mindful of time here, because this is a lunch hour seminar where people are taking a break from lunch. And so as we start coming to the close of this, one thing that I've been really impressed about with both of you guys is that your journey, it was almost like you were led into something without knowing. Like, you showed up, there's a pair of skis there. You showed up and there was a guy's name on the door, and God led you into this amazing relationship. Through that, there's always a steep growth curve. And with that growth curve, I just want to know if you could share with us, maybe each of you could give us 2 points that have been defining for you in what you've learned on this journey of growth in business and in faith. If you could give us 2 or 3 points each. People love listicles. What can they take away from something? And I feel like you have a lot to offer. I'm in your space. I'm in your soundproof booth. If you want to know about this booth, look on the chat.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you.
You're welcome, Scott. But it's really cool. You guys have created something special. I met some of the entrepreneurs here in their space who are learning from Scott and Reuben, and who are partnering. And I'm very curious as to what you're able to impart on these entrepreneurs, what you share with them, how you help them grow, and what tools you can give them. I know it's trite to try and sum it up in 2 or 3 points, but just something that you can leave each of us with.
Yeah, I'll start so that Scott doesn't take mine. There are two words that came to me first, and one of those is curiosity. At home we have one of our values is wonderment, and it's this idea of everyone you're faced with comes with a journey of their own. You do not know what they've come against that day or that week, and that sort of curiosity with our team, with a business idea, with a business assumption. How do you tackle those things with a spirit of questions and a listening ear? So I think that's one that for me is a huge learning. The second one, I got two more then. The second one is focus. And we over the last 2 weeks, it's been a real conversation point for us. Wow, we are entrepreneurs. There's always a new opportunity out there. How about this? How about that? Your discipline, your ability to focus will guaranteed, determine how successful whatever you're working on will be. It'll be one of the major factors. It's not the only factor, but one of the major factors. The last one is simply invitational. If you know Scott and I, we're very invitational, and I think it's part of the kingdom call. And it's part of, we shared about the new office space in a way that we had to check our motives. One of the drivers in that decision too, to go into a space like that, was the ability to invite the city in, to create a space and invite even more. Boy, that sounds like a ton of fun. So I know there's time, but Scott, you go ahead.
Yeah, the phrase that has come up over the last years and years is posture over circumstances. We really don't know and can't control our circumstances a lot of the time, but we can always control our posture. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges. And we also have endless access to a source of peace and perspective. A lot of times it's just whether or not we're going to choose to go there. We're going to frantically choose to try to solve and work it out. And none of us are going to be perfect in that. But I think there's a maturity in trying to continue to really lean into, despite the circumstances, I can have posture over it. And the last piece is just I went back and forth on a text message string with an entrepreneur who is, must be 27 or something like that. He's surrounded by a bunch of hard charging, take over the world types, venture capital. And he wrote and he said, I've felt alone most of my life. And for the first time in my life, I feel like I have friends in a community. My business is growing well. I'm really enjoying what I'm doing, but I'm able to like roll in at 10 o'clock a.m. and I'll work till 7 if I need to and stuff. But but I've got some people coming to me saying, I want real estate is so good right now. What you're doing, you're on the brink. We want to invest in what you're doing so you can go faster. And just reflecting back to him, I was saying, sure, you could go faster and all your friends are taking on a bunch of money, but there's nothing in your life circumstance right now that would say that would be a good move. So kind of preaching to myself too, but more is not always more. More is not necessarily what we want, even if it's success. Or more money to work with might come with its strings. So I think it's really important to understand the phases of where you're at and what you can handle at any given time too.
Guys, thank you so much. I'm gonna pause just for a second. There are a few more questions in the chat box. I'm gonna ask Mike to leave the link up because some people want to know about books that you would recommend. So if you can stay online just for a minute to write that in the chat box. Also, guys, we have a webinar in early fall, autumn fall, that we're going to be announcing. So stay tuned for that. And lastly, I just wanted to thank Scott and Reuben. I announced Scott first because as one of the short guys, I want to give credence to the short guys.
Thank you, that's right.
But these guys are awesome. Digital hot sauce. These boxes are fantastic for a quiet workspace. If you guys need anything, their information is going to be online. And we're going to stay online here for a minute. If you have to go, it is now 1 o'clock sharp. So please feel free to let yourselves go, excuse yourselves. But if you have more questions, we're going to ask Scott and Reuben to stick around just for a few minutes to answer a few more of these questions on the chat box. Thank you.
Before you go, you should know that Sam also has one of the coolest hiring apps I've heard of in a really long time that is very functional, lightweight, and provides an insane amount of value. You can find his link in the chat as well.
Thank you so much, Scott. We're taking care of each other. So guys, we're going to stick around. We're going to answer a few more of these questions. So Scott, Reuben, if you have a few more seconds, George asked this question here. What is your process to get to simple? I think that's such a good question. So I wanted to highlight that.
What's our process to get to simple? What a great question.
Maybe we need a process.
Kelly, are you still on the call? Kelly works with us, and she probably has an answer for that.
The simpler you can get, the more it works. That's for sure. I think simplicity, most things are complex, but summarizing them, like Donald Miller's story brand makes what's been done in marketing for ages. He just turned it into a simple understand accessible framework.
Yeah, I'm curious, how do you get to simple? In what context? I'm not sure who asked the question, but that would be helpful.
Yeah, so it was George who asked the question. And I think, like, for me as an entrepreneur, I think life gets complicated because there's so many people offering you so many different services. And so my product is typically a SaaS product. And the more features you add, you think, oh, I'm giving such a great value. But actually, what you realize is the more things you take away, the better the product is. So from my mind, simple is how do you make it simple? How do you make your life, your product? Because you guys have found a way to kind of make your lives look very easy, even though you're supporting all these businesses. How did you get to this simple place?
Yeah, I think we had really practically, we had a real transformational experience in it with learning about frameworks and how you can take something that is really intuitive or difficult to understand, and if you put it in, you organize it in a way that is very simple, it's extremely powerful. For example, what we did with the triangles today, there's 3 components, up, in, and out, right? That we all kind of intuitively get what that is, but now when you put it on a shape and you attach language to it, it's organized, it's easy to remember, it's really easy to pass on as well. So there's power in tools and frameworks and keeping those as simple as possible.
Okay, last question, just because we're almost at 1:05. Can you guys each recommend one book that you would give to any entrepreneur or anyone in this chat? Just one book. My choice would be Atomic Habits. That book is phenomenal. Yeah.
I think it's just a simple one. What is Street Smarts by Norm Brodsky? If you're an entrepreneur, I can't think of a more simple sort of approach to business. It's tried and true. You can read it every year at different phases and still take so much away from it.
One of the books that Kelly actually put on our radar and helped us answer the question about the office space was one called Scout Mentality. Absolutely brilliant about all the ways our mind works and how we make decisions.
Awesome. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for your time today. Thank you all for joining us on the call. Again, we're going to have another event in autumn, fall, that you should keep your eyes open for. It'll be posted all over the BAM website. We appreciate you all for joining us, and we thank Reuben and Scott again for being here.
Thanks so much for having us.
Thanks for having us.